Welcome to another Author 3Q&A, where indie authors are asked 3 random questions, and you, the viewers, get to comment. The following 3 questions have been chosen at random by the author, who was given a, well, let's face it, not so reasonable amount of time to answer in video format. My name is Eric Bro, creator of Sin's Redemption, and I ask you, what do you get when you merge an artist, author, storyteller with a passion for Norse mythology, orphaned animals, and a young girl who has always dreamed of having her very own dragon? You get the award-winning indie author Katharine E Wibell. When I first came to TikTok as an overwhelmed, inexperienced little indie author with nothing under his belt, one person stood out to me as a beacon of what to strive to be like. Katharine has an imagination that has cottywobbled its way through entire worlds and still thirsts to see more. She grew up rural with a deep compassion for all critters, big or small. She has competed in archery tournaments. She has a dual major in fine arts and animal behavior. She is a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. She has done art marketing, done an internship at a zoo, owns a reverse glass painting art business. She kayaks, hikes, reads, and brews mead, and spends time with her husband and much beloved dog. And yet, she still finds time to be a full-time indie author, having written 20 books in the span of the last 8 years, with more in the making. Katharine has never failed to offer advice. She speaks of her own experiences and shares that knowledge with anyone who asks. She hosts weekly live chats and has been a panelist at DragonCon for several years now. There is far too much to say about this incredible indie author in this video, and I want to leave her as much time as possible to answer her questions. So Katharine, here are your 3 questions. Question number 1. How do you handle writer's block or periods of creative stagnation?
How do I handle with writer's block or creative stagnation? I get this question a lot, and a lot of authors and writers deal with this at some point. I'm sure I will eventually. I've just been very fortunate that at this moment I have the opposite problem, where I have too many ideas and I have to just make sure I keep my focus on the project or projects, as since I'm publishing 2 works simultaneously, make sure I focus on what I'm working on and don't get distracted by the shiny new idea. I do make sure I note those ideas down so I can reference them later whenever it comes the time that I'm ready to take on a new project. But yeah, for me, it's maintaining the focus and working through the projects that I have on hand. For me as well, I guess that's also one of my issues. It's when I have a hiccup in my normal kind of writing routine, and I'll call it a hiccup versus, again, true writer's block. It's, again, not the fact that I don't have ideas, but it's the fact that there are so many things that independent authors need to do in order to maintain their career. There's advertising and marketing and formatting and micromanaging anybody who kind of works with you, as in cover designers and editors and beta readers and et cetera, that there's so much that goes on. I've noticed that I'll have moments, or up to a month, that's what happened recently, where I wasn't even writing anything new because I was working on everything else for my author career but writing new material, and I had to take a moment, reassess, and change things around so I would finally can sit down and work on new material, because writing is an important part of being an author. Surprise! Now, when it comes to writer's block, some of the suggestions that I hear from other authors that I think are kind of worth a try if you are going through that issue. And one is, if you're working on a project and you just don't know where to go with it and you're just stuck, then walk away. Take some time, say it's okay that you're not actively moving things forward, and give yourself a moment to be okay with doing something else. And when you come back to that project, sometimes just allowing your brain a chance to kind of work on it behind the scenes will spark creativity. The other thing I've heard, which is, again, the opposite, is that you sit down and you challenge yourself to take 5 minutes a minute, whatever, to just sit down and plug words on paper. They don't even have to make sense. Just get yourself going into the routine and try to get back into a rhythm. And just sometimes putting words on paper, even if you have to trash all that later, will just get, again, your creativity kind of up and running again, and that may help. So that's my suggestion when it comes to question number 1.
Question number 2. Can you share an example of a scene that presented significant challenges during the writing or editing process?
Have I ever dealt with any kind of problematic scene that's caused me issues either in the writing process or the editing process? And yes. Thankfully, this doesn't happen a lot, but the book that I'm releasing on May 21st, The Hardest Sin to Manny, book 4, The Jed Chronicles, I'll give you an example from there. This book, unlike any of the other ones that I've ever written, I had to log in the timing of every little thing down to essentially the second. It matters for one of my subplots, and kind of drove me a little bit crazy trying to log in everything because I had to know, the timing it took my character to go from every little location to another location, how long conversations last, and etc. so on. So every little thing had to be calculated, timed to make it very precise. And I had a reason for doing so. But because of this, yes, I had a few hiccups where when writing the story, I got into this like big action sequence and I started counting back and I was like, oh, because of this other subplot, I need something else to happen like right now. And so I kept coming up with these stumbling blocks throughout this particular storyline because it was very convoluted and was very complex. Probably not going to do this kind of thing again for anybody who reads this book, but because of that I had to rewrite and rework various scenes throughout the book just to make sure I kept true to the time frame I needed to be in order for this other subplot to make sense and work efficiently. So that one had a lot of editing and a lot of just planning in the process to make the whole story work. So The Hardest Sin to Manny, book 4, that one I probably had a lot of head scratching moments and a lot of scenes that I had to scratch, rewrite, and retweak because of one plot I needed to make happen.
Question number 3. In what ways have your relationships, be they personal or professional, influenced your storytelling?
Did I ever have, or do I ever have any personal or professional relationships that have influenced the way I write? And I kind of have a little convoluted way of explaining this. One will be, I guess, more on the personal side. I'm not an author who bases characters off of people I know, with only 1.5 exceptions, and those are I wrote myself as a character in a book, and that same series was inspired loosely from some childhood play in this multiverse that my sister and I came up with when we were children. So my sister has kind of a character-ish based in the book, loosely based. But outside of that, I really don't let personal relationships influence my characters. If I am interested in someone's worldview and want to like give that aspect to a character, or someone's little snapshot of someone's personal experience. For instance, I had a friend that had a certain injury that I kind of wanted to give one of my characters a similar injury. We kind of talked about it and like how that affected just mobility and pain and all this kind of stuff. And I was able to kind of put that in for that character, but the character itself was not inspired by that friend. It was just that scenario. So that I don't really have a lot of comparison. When it comes on the professional level, I have said this before, but the relationship between an editor and an author is one that you want to be able to kind of have an open line of communication. Editors are there to make your work better, and it can take a little time for a young author to accept some of these suggestions, because some of them can be pretty dramatic, and be able to be okay with that. But accepting those suggestions helps you improve as a writer and can make your book that much better. So building that relationship with editors are very essential. But it also, on the counter thing, is you also learn when to say, nope, I don't want to take that suggestion. I'm going to do my own thing, but that's okay. So for me, editor and author relationships are important and very influential on your books.
You can catch Katharine at the August Dragon Con or at the October Multiverse Con in Atlanta.